Did I tell you we had Sean Lewis and Adam Grimace on last week?
Yeah. Adam was telling me about it.
He's a hero, man.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Boom. All right, we good?
You there, Matty? You are the man.
All right, I made it. Thanks, man. Thanks for helping me out with that.
Yeah, anytime. I'll give it just a couple more minutes, Matty, and then I'll put the slides up and all that good stuff.
Okay, cool. How are you guys doing, man? How are things in your end?
Not bad. So the governor's got us to to May 28th, and then we'll find out hopefully what the plan is. But I think Indiana, which is right next to us, they're back to, I think they've got 6 people in a small group or something like that. So no contact right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully maybe end of June we might get back to playing. But I was talking to another lad on who's doing the instructor course that I'm on. He's in Alabama, and he said they're playing full league games and everything.
No way.
Just madness. He said they're not sanitizing the ball, just going for it. And he's like, pretty big club down there.
Herd mentality, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
And wild times. Everything in the DC metro area is very much lockdown mode and not really allowed to do anything. So just trying to plan for the trying to plan for like multiple different things, hoping we'll be able to phase into being able to play. But we have absolutely no idea what our timeline is at all.
Yeah, I mean, I know here they're talking about breaking it down even further into cities now. So Traverse City and the UP, they can have restaurants and bars open at 25%. Detroit, I'm guessing they'll be on lockdown the longest, but I don't know how that affects sports. Someone was telling me actually that soccer is lucky, like basketball and American football and anything where you touch it with your hands is going to be a long time to come back. But who knows with that one? They were saying like tennis, you're not allowed to touch it with your hand. You have to scoop it up and hit it.
No way.
Do you know Luke Ruff, Mirza, or no?
No.
No, he's from Bradford, so he could be. He could have got that information very unreliably, but that's what he told me anyway. All right, we'll give it one more minute. I know some people are figuring out the link here.
Well, California was saying no sporting events until 2021, and then now they changed it to first week of June. They can have sporting events, but no people.
Yeah.
Liga style, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can figure out a way. I mean, if you can test people, who knows? I guess, yeah, like you said, James, if they're doing it in Germany, there's got to be a model now at least.
Yeah. I know for England, a lot of the players are saying they won't play. Aguero, Troy Deeney, there's quite a few of them came out.
Yeah, and then I saw
typical English.
One or two players at Burnley tested positive for it.
All right, I'm just adding a couple more people here because they're saying they're struggling to get in, and then we're going.
No worries.
I can't believe your name was with an A. You've never corrected me on that before. I must have spelled it 50 times.
Maybe I just haven't seen haven't seen you use my last name. I don't know.
Okay. All right, let's get this show. People might jump in halfway through, and I'll just accept them as we go. So let's see. Can you guys see that on my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So we've got Matty, Arrington, and Mirza, and I'll let them kind of introduce themselves in a little bit. Keep your microphones on mute just for now. At the end, there will be an opportunity to ask some questions, and I know some of you guys already sent me a couple of questions just to add to that last slide. Let me just quickly add these people who are jumping in late. Oh, maybe they've gone. There we go. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Mirza first. You can just give you a bit of an introduction about himself, and yeah, I'll just give it to you, Mirza.
Cool. So, hello guys. James, thanks again for having me on. My background, originally from Bosnia, but I grew up in Kenwood, Michigan. Youth club career, played for Grand Valley Premier, which turned into the Crew Juniors, which turned into Midwest United. So been part of the club since I was young. My college recruiting process wasn't very special. Recruited by just a few Division III, Division II, NAIA schools, and I ended up at Calvin College for 2 years. And from Calvin College, I transferred to Davenport University, and that's where I finished up playing. After college, kind of wanted to pursue the dream of playing, so I went out to Europe and was at a club, at a German club in the 4th Division called Rot-Weiss Essen before ending up back in Bosnia with a team in the 1st Division called Olympic Sarajevo. While there, I tore my rotator cuff and in my shoulder and was released. Came home and kind of had to make that decision. You know, did I want to keep trying to pursue the professional dream of playing or not? Obviously, love soccer, still do, and I just thought that I'd have a lot more success in the game as a coach and using my passion in the game as a coach than a player. So. Made the decision to stop playing and really put all my energy in coaching. And then I started coaching back home at East Kentwood High School, where I went, South Christian High School, and did some club coaching for Vardar West, where I coached 2 younger teams, and I was the goalkeeping director at that time. Only did that for about 8 months or so, and then I moved to Connecticut, where I coached at a Division I school called the University of Hartford and a smaller academy team called Oakwood Soccer Club. After being there for 3 years, I was lucky enough to get the job at Real Salt Lake, where I was with the academy for a year and a half, and then just because of a firing, the head coach for the USL team got fired last year. Kind of moved everyone up, so the assistant coach became the head coach, the goalkeeper coach became the assistant, and I became the goalkeeper coach for the USL team, and kind of did a little bit of both with the USL team and the academy until the new year, where I fully transitioned into the USL team. So my role now at Real Salt Lake is goalkeeper coach for the USL team, and then goalkeeping director for our foundation program, which is U9s through U13s, and then our satellite clubs, which are in San Diego and Arizona.
Cool, love it. I think your story, Mirza, is fantastic. It's a little bit different to the standard play in a high level club and then go D1 and then try and go in the draft. But I love how it's maybe a little bit different, and it'll give especially the older boys and maybe a different perspective of the different routes to go pro. So thank you for sharing that. Matty, do you want to do a little intro as well?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area in Bethesda, Maryland. I actually played youth soccer for Bethesda Soccer Club. From there, I was playing for both Bethesda Soccer Club and my high school, Waltman High School, and was kind of gauging best options for college. Ended up committing to George Mason University, which is a Division I school in Fairfax, Virginia. I actually left after 2 years. I just decided that I wanted to pursue other opportunities and seek out new challenges. And whether by fate or good fortune, I ended up getting some opportunities to go on trial in Italy. Went over there, went on trial with a few teams, including AS Roma, Arezzo in Serie C, Avellino in Serie B, Cavese in Serie C, and ended up signing for a team in one of the lower divisions called San Paolo Ostiense. And then the year after, signed a contract with a team in a division just a step higher called Palasportiva Cecchina, which was just outside of Rome. Faced a lot of difficulties there in terms of getting citizenship and meeting work permit requirements and passport requirements, which created a lot of limitations as an American playing abroad. Needless to say, I wouldn't have traded that opportunity for anything. Ended up coming home after about 2.5 years and trying to pursue some other opportunities abroad. Ended up getting injured while I was playing back home, tore a hip flexor, came back from that, tore a rotator cuff, similar to you, Mirza. And reality kind of set in of like, listen, are you going to keep doing this? You're going to keep chasing this dream. About 24 years old at that point, or do I need to kind of figure out what the next step is and the new direction for myself? And that's when I got into coaching. I actually started with one of my former coaches who had a couple of rec level teams and was stepping away from coaching and asked me if I wanted to take him over. And I said, yeah, quite frankly, I needed to do something for work and to make a little bit of money so I could pay rent. So I started with that and absolutely fell in love with it. And so from there, it was just continually finding ways to get more education about coaching, taking courses, finding opportunities where I could go and coach with higher level teams than where I was at that current time. And one thing led to another over years of doing that. And I ended up, coaching in college for Howard University, another Division I school. And then now just recently in the last about 6 or 8 years, transitioned into DC United's academy with the U17s.
Cool. We'll go into some deeper stuff in a little bit. But what would you say for both of you, kind of having a similar journey going to Europe? What do you think was the difference, the biggest difference? Let's go with the soccer side of things to begin with. Mirza, if you want to go in first, what did you say is the biggest difference soccer-wise from what you'd experienced in the States to what you experienced over in Europe?
Yeah, so obviously, being part of the high school club and college system here, obviously, we have coaches who care a lot about us as individuals, as people, about our families, how things are going off the field. And transitioning into the professional game, especially in Europe, one of the difficult parts was that realizing that soccer is a business, right? So the coaches at the end of the day need to get results in order to keep a job and in order to feed their families and take care of themselves. So that was the most important thing for them. So for me, it was so strange after tearing my rotator cuff in Bosnia. It was kind of like, okay, you're no use for us right now. You're not gonna help us get results on the field. So so be it. Like, and that's it, which was really hard for me because I've been around a lot of really good coaches growing up, and I'm sure you guys have met them in the Grand Rapids area who are very good people and care about you more than just a soccer player. So that was probably the big realization for me, is the switch to kind of the business side or the more cutthroat side.
Yeah, I think that's great insight. And I had that as a 16-year-old, kind of going from on a youth contract to a young pro. The difference within just 2 weeks of, hey, you're here as a job, not just to play, is big. Matty, did you have any similar experiences? Anything different?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mirza touched on a really, really important part of it, is that it very much changes from play and a hobby to work and a means of supporting yourself. And I think one of the most interesting, or maybe hardest things for me to face, was like on the training pitch every day, like you're competing for a job. And as much as like those guys are your good friends in the locker room and your good friends off the field, on the field, it's a completely different atmosphere, which very much caught me off guard. I was used to club soccer and high school soccer and college soccer where, maybe you didn't have the guys on the team with the same kind of maybe goal passion that you did to go to the higher level and really push yourself. It was more of like a friendly atmosphere. But once I went abroad and entered into that environment, it was completely different. So that was a big shock to me for sure. I think outside of that, you're looking at just the soccer culture in other countries. I mean, even playing in the lower divisions in Italy, I mean, we didn't have a big stadium. We weren't getting paid a lot of money. We didn't have big names or big stars on the teams. But you still had fans coming out to games and heckling and yelling and screaming and, expecting results. And as well as that, the guys you're playing with and against are really playing for something. I mean, they're playing for a job. And that was, that was a shock to me. I mean, there were a couple times we had incidents on the field and fights would break out and stuff like that. I'd be like, what is wrong with these people? Like, this is insane. But it's a different mentality, for better or for worse. And I think outside of that, the last thing I would say, just from a playing perspective, are the tactics. I learned more tactically in my 2.5 years in Italy than I did in my previous 19 in the US. It was so specific to attention to detail, to understanding where to be and when, how to play a position properly, what your role was on the field, versus kind of when I grew up playing center back in the US, which is what, my job was to get the ball and kick it as far as I could down the field. Pretty simple here. It was very different when I was abroad. Big learning curve.
Did you enjoy that transition? Kind of going to a more tactical-based training?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously the language barrier made it quite difficult my first year. So the coaching staff would keep things pretty simple for me. And there were a couple of teammates who would try to speak, the little bit of English they knew to help me, adjust and understand. The other interesting part for me was that I always grew up playing center back in the United States. And when I went abroad, I ended up playing attacking mid, center forward, and on the wing. And that was really, again, more just by chance and circumstance than anything else. So not only was it learning like a new style of play, but it was learning a new style of play in a position I never played before. But, I don't know, it worked out.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So we'll just look at, on the next slide, just a week in the life. And we've kind of put a college/pro player, because I know you both have experience with both kind of programs, if you want to call it that. So Mirza, if you just want to kind of start off again and just kind of go through, what does the week in the life of a pro look like, if you want to do it from a player's standpoint to begin with, and then we'll get into more of the kind of the club and the coaching side of it. So did you have any kind of specific training habits or lifestyle habits that kind of linked into the game at the weekend? Just kind of talk us through what your lifestyle was as a young pro.
Yeah, for me, and James can probably attest to this, because I wasn't very talented goalkeeper. So as far as as far as a lot of these other things, the only reason that I had even the few months of playing in Europe was just because of the other things that I was willing to do and the other sacrifices I was willing to make, as far as like lifestyle choices and how I try to take care of myself. Training, obviously, extremely important for me, in the weight room and on the field, and always trying to do extra. Maybe at the end, maybe that was kind of like a little extra stress on the shoulders, maybe at the end. But I just thought that was what was going to set me apart and hopefully let me get to my goal. Even a few years ago, obviously you guys are extremely lucky with the coaches you guys have at Midwest and probably at your high schools as well. A set schedule, talk about your periodization and your training loads and things like that. And, even a few years ago when I graduated high school, which was only 2010, like we didn't have all this stuff. So anywhere that I could get games or trainings or things like that, I did, whether I was playing extra men's league games at Soccer Spot or at Woodland, I did that. Coach Lewis Robinson would let me hop in his sessions with his U16 or U17 team that he had back in the day that was really, really talented, and it was a really good level. Try to get in any sessions with James as I could, anything like that. So as far as a set schedule, I wouldn't say I had one. I just knew that every day I had to do something. I hired myself a personal trainer when I was in college, and he helped me a lot. So as far as a set schedule, other than that,
just doing
training with him, that was about it.
Yeah. So we had a question which is on the last slide, but I'll bring it up now because I think it's a good one, which was from one of the boys on the 2005. Said, how many hours per day should I be playing soccer? How would you answer that question as a player? I think is probably a good mindset.
For me and Matty, you can answer this as well. For me, when I was playing, I didn't really look at like, oh man, am I going to be tired, or is this the loading? Like, oh man, I trained a little bit too much today. If there was a game or a training session available to me, I just try to take advantage of it and do it, even if I was a bit more tired. I know, like I said, times have changed now, and clubs have sports scientists, and we have sports scientists and training loads and things like that. But that wasn't something that when I was playing, I looked at. Just like I said, the only way that I thought that I was going to be successful or have any chance in the game was by training as much as I possibly could, or so that's kind of how I approach it. Never really set a time. If there was something available, then I was there for it.
Do you think it'd be fair to say that kind of soccer spot in those pickup games almost is your version of street soccer for Grand Rapids?
Yeah, for sure.
I know kind of a lot of people say, oh, there's no street soccer, it's only in Brazil, but the pickup games and the time you had with Adam Grimwis is sort of, I think it all adds up, right? And
sure.
I think
that was
well.
Yeah, that was John Conlon actually recommended that to me, because obviously in the winter it's tough to get any training time. So he recommended to me, like as a sophomore in high school, just go sit down at Soccer Spot and ask the men's leagues if they needed a goalkeeper. So I just hang around Soccer Spot all night, see if guys needed a goalkeeper, and if you did well enough, they'd call you back. And obviously that was always that was important to me in my development growing up.
Love it. Matty, same for you. Give us a story.
Well, I think it's just to piggyback off Mirza there, just talking about in terms of kind of how much time you commit to it on a daily basis. I mean, I remember when I was, early in college, particularly in the off season when I didn't have class or something, I was running in the morning. I was training, doing ball work in the afternoons, and then I was lifting in the evenings. And that was me doing that. That wasn't a set schedule I was given. That wasn't a program that was provided for me. There was nothing of the sort like that. It was just a decision that I made of kind of approaching this idea that I want to play at a higher level with the mentality that no matter what I was doing, somebody out there was working harder than I was. And I think it's massively important from that perspective. I mean, similar to what Mirza was saying, there are times that I look back now where maybe I didn't regiment my workload enough, right? And I remember some days where I would train and my legs would feel like I was running through sand. And I was just like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not like going at full speed today? I feel heavy. And I think a big part of that was that I wasn't taking days off or a day off each week. So I do think that, having the mentality to push yourself to get out onto a field and train by yourself if you can't get into a game, to go for a run on your own without anyone asking you, or to go, do some strength training, whatever it may be, is really important. But it's also really important to listen to your body and make sure you're paying attention to, aches or pains or injuries you have and making sure you're dealing with that appropriately. And something I didn't really do very well that I look back on. I would say outside of that, just looking at the differences between a college schedule and a pro schedule, when I was in college, you pretty much have your day set out for you. you have your classes, you have your schedule, you have your training times, you have your game schedule listed. You kind of know how everything is going to flow throughout the week. The difference with being in a professional environment is, and this is a conversation I've with kids all the time who want to attempt to make this jump, you're only at training for 2 to 3 hours a day. You have to figure out what you're doing with that other 21 to 22 hours each day. And you have to find a way to create some sort of life for yourself. You don't have classes, you don't have a set schedule, you're on your own. And especially if you're going to a foreign place where you may not speak the language or you may not understand the culture, you have to figure that out. And you have to really put yourself out there and make an aggressive effort to develop a new circle of friends, to develop a social life, to develop new hobbies. For me, it was going to school part-time at an American university while I was living in Rome, just so I could be doing something else during the day or interacting with other people. So I think that's a huge piece of it that a lot of players forget about, because sometimes kids go abroad, they sign a contract, and they sit in their apartment 22 hours a day, and that's really, really a bad place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting insight. So I'll just throw one more thing out there from this kind of group of questions. Obviously, a lot of the boys, they want to go on and play in those pro leagues or make ODP teams or ID camps or college and stuff like that. So quick question for you. How would you attack kind of that tryout or ID camp or combine process from a mental side, and also from like a playing standpoint of how would you get recognized? Go on, Matty. I'll let you jump at that one first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of go back to what I was saying before, when I ended up, I came to Italy on trial as a center back or a defensive mid, and then I ended up, signing with 2 teams as an attacking player, as a forward or a winger. And the only reason that happened was because I'd gone to a couple of tryouts as a center back. I ended up getting another opportunity to trial with another team while I was there. And literally on my way to the tryout, my agent told me, he goes, listen, you're a forward, and you tell them you're a forward because that's what they need. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is, I guess, the nature of the business here. And I showed up. They asked me what position I played. I told them forward, trained with him for 2 days, played in a friendly, scored, okay. And from then on out, I was a forward. So I think that's a big testament to, if you go to try with a team and you know that that's the environment you want to be in and that's the level you want to be at, if they ask you to play goalkeeper, you play goalkeeper. I mean, you figure out a way to be in that environment and to get your way in. And then from there, you prove what else you have to prove, or, you make adjustments from that point. But I think having that mentality of just like, I'm going to work relentlessly and I'm going to do whatever's asked of me is invaluable as a player and as a coach when I'm looking at players. I'd say mentality overall is absolutely the biggest factor.
Love it. Mirza, anything to add on that one?
Yes. On top of the mentality part is just at Real Salt Lake with I'll use the academy for example, since all the players here are in the academy age really. All of our boys live here, have moved away from home, and are living in Utah in dorms and going to school and training most days twice a day, and are traveling around the country to play and things of that sort. And obviously because the first team and the USL team are under the same roof, everyone's interacting with one another. So on top of the mentality is how coachable you are is extremely important, because of how much contact time you have with coaches now. There are tons of eyes on you. There's always someone there trying to help you and help you get better. And for you to waste these crucial years of your development by maybe being a little bit too hard-headed or being stuck in your ways is only going to hurt you. Like Matt's example, if he's no, I'm a center back and that's it, then he might not get those opportunities that he had. So, being open and coachable is extremely, extremely vital.
Love it. And I think that kind of leads into into the next kind of slide, talking about kind of that pathway to college and then eventually, hopefully, onto pro. So we kind of already touched on, what you guys are looking for in terms of scouting and watching the boys play. I know, Mirza, when you came and watched I think it was our 04 boys play at the showcase, what kind of stuff are you looking for kind of on the field? Do you go there with a set scouting report that you're looking for, or is it just who catches your eye? Give us a little bit more background on that kind of stuff, please.
Absolutely. So when I do some scouting and recruiting for the academy, a lot of that depends on the age and the position and things like that. I'll kind of dive in more a little bit, kind of again, my focus now since I've left Connecticut 2 years ago has almost strictly been with goalkeepers. But like with goalkeepers or players, just some things that excite me are at the younger age groups is kind of like raw projects who I see like a lot of potential in. So how do I look at that? Is just can this player and we'll use a forward, for example. If watching a game and a forward is there and he's scoring a lot of goals, but maybe he's struggling with the tactical side of the game. He's not sure of his positioning or his runs or things like that. That's something that can be taught and developed, but he's got that natural tool in scoring goals, and that's something that's extremely vital and at all levels, and we value that. So we're willing to work on the other sides of the game. Obviously, as you get older and maybe you're a high school senior, closer to college, now you've got to be a little bit more fine-tuned. Now you're a player who's got to have other different tools and skill sets to his game that are going to make him more successful and hopefully closer to being a pro. And then from that point, when we do find someone that we like, we bring him in on trial for a week, and that time is for us to see how he performs in our environment as well. It's a lot of people say they want to be professionals, but when you have to move away from home and you dedicate every single day to training and watching what you eat and doing these types of things, then players realize maybe they don't want to be pros. Maybe it's too much for them. So having them coming into our environment too is crucial.
Like it. What kind of events are you going to watch right now, or maybe not you individually, but your scouting network? What are the main events that they're going to watch at the moment?
Right. So obviously right now it's a difficult time with the virus, but before that, we'd be at the other academy showcases. We'd be at what was that tournament in Vegas, James? Pardon?
National League.
National League, ODP events as well, and then we rely also on recommendations and things as well. Contacting the network of coaches that we know that we have worked with in the past and kind of getting their thoughts and feelings on a player, and that then coming and watching different tournaments that the club's participating in as well.
Cool, love it. I actually stole something off your Twitter that I just put in there, which I love the quote. I'll let the boys read that and I'll send it out as well. But basically saying, whether you make it as a pro, 99% of it is just pure love for the game. If you love the game and you're doing it, it's never work, right? It's just enjoying it. Matty, give us a little bit more on DC United and their process of kind of identifying talent and scouting.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with, our network and our partner clubs. That's something that we value massively. We trust their, means of identification. We trust their opinions on players. We have conversations and keep basically an interactive list of players that we go back and forth on, and we work with about 8 or 10 different clubs in the area. And then what we'll do is we'll actually invite those players into basically like a trial day or a couple of trial days where they can come mix in with the group, play with them, maybe have some sessions just on their own with the other trialists, and go about things that way. So we really trust our partner clubs. One thing that I wanted to touch on is just from the scouting perspective, kind of the differences of looking at, pro players, college players, and youth players, which I think pertains to this conversation and kind of where we started and where we are now with it. I scouted for the Seattle Sounders with the first team for 2 years. And then I worked at Howard University and was obviously recruiting players there. And now I'm doing the same thing with DC United. I kind of break it into different categories in terms of what I'm looking at for each level. And I think at the pro level, you're looking for something more specific, somebody to fit a role, somebody to fit a position. Somebody may have specific attributes to play at the pro level, whether it be some sort of technical skill, tactical skill, or physical skill. At the college level, you're looking for a guy who might fit into your program, into your team environment, who fits into your school, is a good student. And then at the youth level, you're looking more at kids who have potential, kids who have a passion for the game, and obviously have like a sound technical base, or you see something there that you can build on. So, similar to what Mirza and I were saying earlier about like the higher levels being maybe more business-like, I think each level in terms of scouting and recruiting has different attributes and things you're looking for.
Yeah. Would you say it's fair to say, no matter whether it's an MLS academy, a USL team, a college, D1 or D2, that whoever's leading it, the leadership role, they're looking for players, first that do their core values kind of align with the culture of the club? Or do you think it's more about talent? What do you think comes first?
I think you're definitely looking for players who fit into your style of play, your culture, your tactical breakdown. And that's not to say that there aren't outliers, because obviously you're going to see players who stand out, who are special players, who may play a position that you already have depth in, or maybe play a certain way that doesn't necessarily suit specifically how you would want your team to play or operate. But when you see a special player, you sometimes have to make the decision or have the conversation that player is worth bringing in, and maybe adjusting slightly what your team does and how your team plays. Or it's, helping that player to utilize their skills and abilities to grow and fit into your team or your club style of play. But yeah, it's massively important that not just the players we recruit, but the players that we currently keep on roster obviously maintain kind of our culture and our values. That's something that gets brought up in every technical meeting that we have.
Got you. Mirza, what would you say is the culture of Real Salt Lake? Like, what is the things that, as from the pros all the way down to the youngest academy team, what's the constant message that you guys are giving and are passing on to the players?
Yeah, I think obviously, being a smaller market club, we're not going to be able to get big players like Carlos Vela or the Zlatan Ibrahimovic's and those types of guys. So we really have to make sure that our scouting and recruiting is good, and making sure that, in my time at the club, the players that we have brought in from overseas, great careers and things, the humility and work ethic and kind of like the leadership and the togetherness that they
cohesiveness.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like being the small market club that we are, big personalities won't fit in kind of in our within our club. So we have done a really good job of bringing in guys who are excited about the club, We are a club that signs academy guys regularly, and I think we lead the league or are second in the league in homegrown minutes for academy graduates. So we have a good mix of older players who are comfortable in that and are excited to be leaders and to kind of like mentor these younger players, and then younger players who know the club because they've been part of it for so many years and are willing to do their best in order to help the club grow and be successful.
Love it, love it. So, Matty, just to touch on the scouting one more time, because I think a lot of the boys will be really interested in it. Obviously, we've sent a few players over to Mirza at Real Salt Lake, and hopefully we'll send some over to DC United. What are the things that you're talking to their club coach about? What are the questions that you're asking? What are you trying to find out for the stuff off the field?
You know, your character is always massive. You know, if I were to switch the conversation around and talk about how many, let's say, college coaches that I've spoken to who are interested in players in the academy, one of the things that I stress massively is the kid's character first and foremost. I want to let them know that this player is going to come in. He's going to work hard. He's not going to be a problem. He's going to be a leader within the team. You're never going to have to ask this kid to train. I want to make that clear and cemented before we have any sort of conversation about the kid's technical ability or tactical ability or any sort of gifts that he may have. So that's the same thing I look for when I'm scouting, when I'm looking for players. If I'm talking to you, James, and I'm looking to pull a kid from Midwest United, I want to know who that kid is before how he is as a player. I want to know what his mentality is like. I want to know what his family is like, his background, what his values are, how he is at training. Does he shake your hand when he shows up? Does he say thank you when he leaves? Does he pick up the equipment when you're done? And all this stuff seems like little kind of innocuous stuff that isn't a big deal, but it's massive. I can't tell you how many kids that I've watched who I was looking to recruit who, let's say, bark back at a referee, talk back to a coach, are disrespectful to a linesman, get sent off in a game, and just don't handle themselves well. And so I look at that kid and I say, that's going to be a problem. I don't want to deal with that. I want kids who know what their role is on the field, understand how to carry themselves, and it goes unsaid they have to have some sort of technical and tactical base. That's a given. But again, it comes right back to mentality and character. There's really nothing bigger than that in my eyes.
That's awesome. Love that, love that. So Mirza, I'll throw that over to you in terms of our current environment with the distance learning. How have you found communicating with the players through, texting, phone calls, Zooms? Have you found player response has been good? Have you got frustrated with players? What has their feedback been? Just kind of interested to know what the commitment, I guess, of the MLS Academy and even the USL boys has been, given everything that's going on in kind of a different environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, thankfully for me, the goalkeepers that I've worked with in the academy and the USL and the first team have it's been fantastic. But unfortunately, kind of in the academy and the USL team, it's kind of, just like anywhere. You've got guys who have to post runs or lifts or whatever they are, and there's guys who will post it right away in the next 12 hours or so, and then there's guys who you're still having to chase and get times from, and who are logging in Zoom meetings at 11:59 or 12 when the meeting's at 12, and things of that sort. So hopefully, luckily for me, on an individual level, on a personal level, it's been great, but kind of overall, it's been all over the place.
That's fair. I think it's been a pretty difficult transition for everybody. So hopefully we get back on the field. So speaking of being on the field, and I was talking to you, Mirza, about how we've set up kind of our academy program to just be a much more inclusive, academy rather than just individual teams. Talk to us a little bit about team training or team development versus individual development at Real Salt Lake? Do you create individual plans? How do they link into the team training? How is every individual's goals assessed? Give me a little bit of feedback on that.
Yeah. So again, it really depends. It depends on the levels. In the academies, our main focus is to produce professionals. And as far as focusing like opposition scouts, things of that sort, it's not really important for us at the academy level. Individual development is the most important thing for us. So, for example, every kid in the academy has their own individual development program, and we have a technical coach as well. So every day the boys will train at 7 a.m. And then in the afternoons, they're either lifting with the strength conditioning coach, they're with a technical coach, or they're with their team coach, or the other team coach is working on their individual development plan. Big focus for me working with the academy goalkeepers was, different in their individual development plans. A lot of it had to do with distribution and different things like that. So at least twice a week, we were just training together in the afternoon, just working on that, whether that was working on the weak foot or hitting different types of passes and things of that sort. Now in the USL, now the focus is on winning. Fortunately for us, we were able to win the USL championship last year. And on top of winning, we want to produce players for the first team as well. And last year, 2 guys signed from the Monarchs to play with the first team. So that's also a main focus of ours, and also developing individual development plans for players that we have targeted as guys who have potential to sign with the first team, and then still spending individual time with them after training or before training to work on some of those areas.
Do you find that the individual side of things, is that player led or is that mostly coach led? Who's kind of leading that process?
That's a great question. For the academy guys,
is the coach saying, Mirza, you need to improve on this, this, and this? Or is it more the players are coming and saying, hey, I'd like to get better at this? Who kind of initiates the process, would you say?
Right. And with the USL team, it's been coach led, and in the academy, it's been both. So we'll sit down and we'll have a discussion and kind of get to know kind of what the player is thinking, for example, and kind of what the player is thinking as far as, things that they think they're really strong at and things that they need to develop, and then kind of our input in that as well. So I'd say for the younger age groups, it's both, and then for me, at least in the USL, it's been coach led.
Got you. So for the younger boys, it's pretty much, evaluate your own game, see what you want to improve, and then come to me as a coach, and I'll put something together for you.
Exactly. Obviously, like we spoke about it, kind of, when and Matt touched on it, when you're younger, you want to have guys who are passionate about the game and who love the game and love to train. And I think that's a huge factor, is guys who are like, hey, coach, I watched my clips from this weekend's game, and I struggle with X, Y, and Z. Like, could we touch on that, work on that? Or I have a question about this. What are your thoughts on this? And that's what really gets me excited as a coach. Guys who are active in their development.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit of a knock-on effect, right? Once one player does it and starts to feel good, the next one does, and that's kind of how the culture's created, right? Matty, do you guys have any different processes at DC, or any kind of different insight?
Well, I mean, big difference from Real Salt Lake is obviously we don't have the guys on site all day, right? So they follow their regular at-home school schedule. We have a couple of guys who do online schooling, guys who are, here in the academy coming from, North Carolina, or different parts of the country. The difference being with the individual development is typically we will pluck out a handful of players from each team who will ask to show up about 30 minutes before their session or to stay 30 minutes after their session. And we'll do some positional specific work with them to help develop their individual abilities. Obviously, if we had more time with them, we see them 4 days a week in a team environment. So we try to attack the individual development as much as we can, but our primary focus is the team training aspect. If we had them on site, that'd be fantastic. Get us set up like Real Salt Lake and get a hold of these kids a couple times a day.
Just need a couple of $100 million, huh? So I know one of the boys just posted a question there. Matty just said that they're not an in-residency program. So, Matty, how many times a week are you training with those boys right now? Oh, well, not right now, but in a regular season.
So we train 4 times a week. Typically we're always 4 times a week. The only time that we really shrink it down to 3 days is kind of when we're in a bit of an off season, more or less in the winter, where we have a little bit less going on. We give guys, a little bit lighter training schedule, but then we ramp it back up as, we get closer to GA Cup and stuff like that. One thing I will touch on though, from the individual development aspect is, I think just like any other training environment, whether it be an MLS club or a youth club or whatever it may be, the onus is on the player at the end of the day. If you want to commit the time, you want to get better, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You don't really need someone to tell you that. You have to get out there and just put in the time. You have to make time for it.
Like it. Mirza, could you just kind of quickly run through maybe a quick week in the life of an in-residence player? Just because I think it would be great for the boys to hear, and it'd be cool as well.
Absolutely. So, just a quick, if it's a normal week. So, on Monday Monday morning, we'll usually give the boys off. So they won't train at 7 a.m. They'll get up. They'll go on our site. We have our dorms. We have our high school, and then we have 2 indoor 11v11 fields and outdoor fields as well. And like I said, the whole club uses that space. So the academy, the first team, and the USL team. So the boys will wake up, go to school, have breakfast, go to school, and then after school, we'll train. And we'll spend that time on the field. Tuesday morning, we'll train at 7 a.m. The boys will wake up early, train at 7 a.m., go back to their dorms, shower, get ready for school, have breakfast, go to school. And then that afternoon as well, we'll train. And then it just depends on the week. That might be a lift or that might be on the field. Then Wednesday, again, same schedule, 7 a.m. and then afternoon session as well. Thursday will be the 7 a.m. again, breakfast, school, and then maybe a lift or a video analysis day. Usually I use that time for the goalkeepers for video analysis stuff, to either go over training clips or game clips. Friday will only be, and then for it depends what our game schedule is looking like that weekend. If we have to travel, then we'll train at 7 a.m. usually, and then the boys will have breakfast, and then we'll get on the buses and go to the airport. For away games, we have to fly for all our games because there's no one that close for us here in Utah, so we're flying to all our games, and then come back Sunday night, and again repeat that same cycle. Monday morning off, and get into it. Obviously, it depends on a weird weekend. If Matt was talking about GA Cup, if we've got GA Cup, or if we've got a double weekend, or different things of that sort.
I mean, it sounds like a dream. I love. I think the boys, would it be fair to say they've got a decent amount of accountability in terms of being on time and looking after themselves? Yeah,
absolutely. It's it's tough. It's a lot of training. It's a lot of time spent on the field, and if you're looking at this quote here, the reason I loved it is because the importance for the love of the game. If you don't love the game or don't love getting better, the process and getting better, then then it's definitely not a great environment for you because of the sacrifice and that you have to put in.
Yeah, and I think it probably answers that question at the bottom there of why do some make it and others don't. I read a good article about Leo Messi, and he says there's a lot of hard work, but he loves every minute of it. And it seems, hearing you guys talk about it, like there's a lot of quote unquote work, but it's the players that want more of that work that are ultimately going to be the ones that succeed the most. So we'll just go into, in fact, sorry, there was one question that popped up there. I'll let Mirza have a stab at it first. So we're going to add video analysis to most of our high school boys teams for next year. We use Huddle. So what would be some ideas for them when they're looking at their own video? I know, just speaking from my experience with the girls' academy teams last year, we would give them a theme to look at as a team and then an individual theme based on defenders, midfielders, strikers. If they were just to go by themselves, what are some key kind of performance indicators they can look at, or how would they look to break it down themselves, Mirza? What would be your advice?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I'm sorry, I have to go back to kind of the goalkeeping route just because that's been my main focus. So kind of on that Huddle point, all the boys will have their clips from the weekend's games, and they'll have that to them Monday, Tuesday latest. They'll have that, and then also for me, I videotape every single session of mine, and I send it out to the boys as well. So we kind of try to pair up situations within the game and in training, and to see trends and why the goalkeepers have been successful or unsuccessful in that. And then also I think especially at younger ages, having an idol and having a favorite player, a favorite goalkeeper is extremely important. And I try to select clips from the guys' favorite goalkeepers as well, who execute these situations in certain ways as well. So that's kind of how I've gone about it, is just trying to use different references within training, within games, and also other outside references as well.
Love it. Obviously, Matty, because your environment's a little bit different and you don't maybe get as much time with the players, do you guys use much video? What's kind of the process for it? What are you looking for the players to get out of it the most?
Yeah, we use it, both from a team and an individual standpoint. A lot of times for, let's say day after, or 2 days after the game, let's say, we may do a film session prior to training, go through stuff from the weekend, again, specifically team related in that environment, or we'll do the scout of an opponent, a day or two before the game going into the weekend. Again, more focused on team structure, strategy, and tactics. From an individual standpoint, a lot of what we're doing right now, we're having players, not just focus, let's say, on their highlight reel, right? You want players to watch games and, almost focus on the moments when they don't have the ball more than when they do. Are they finding moments where they can create space for themselves without the ball? Are they positioning themselves correctly to give themselves as much time and space as possible, taking into account their teammates, the opponent, and where the ball is? I think a lot of times when you watch games or you have a kid clip a game, they basically just send you their highlight reel of them with the ball, them running down the field, taking guys on, taking shots, good passes. And quite frankly, it doesn't tell the whole story. I think it's really important that when you watch a game, you check yourself without the ball, see what you're doing, see what your body orientation is, how you position yourself, how you affect the opponent without the ball. Because at the end of the day, you spend, 99% of the game without the ball. I mean, the studies they've done, you have the ball in a 90-minute game for like a minute and a half total. So you really need to focus in on those things, in my opinion. And then outside of that, I think you can pair with high-level clips. I think what Mirza said is really important. Our technical director, Gus Tarrant, actually has all of us as a staff keep a folder on our computers of high-level clips. If we see a great run by an attacking player, a great defensive recovery, good positioning by a goalkeeper, whatever, we clip it out of that game and put it into a folder, because we want to be able to have a reference point for all of our players to say, okay, well, this is what you did in this situation, right or wrong, good or bad. This is what a pro in your same position did. Not to say what he did was right or wrong, but just to give you a reference point. So yeah, I think it's massively important to have a higher level to compare yourself to, because at the end of the day, I mean, those guys are doing it. They've made it. That's what you should be looking at.
For sure. So just to go back on that, you said you had the players themselves would cut their own film and cut their kind of highlights?
At times, yes. I mean, we also, right now we're doing a little bit more of individual clipping. We do our fair share of it as the staff, but we also find it massively important, again, just from a development perspective, individual player development. I mean, you should be able to watch a game, clip out, maybe let's say similar to what you were touching on, James, of I give you a specific topic to look for. Let's say I want to see James at right wing when we are in possession. So I want to see how you're moving the ball, how you're helping your teammates, how you're supporting, what runs you're making. I don't want to see the tackles you made. So don't send me clips of you in defensive moments. So it just helps to teach the player how to look at a game, how to analyze a game, and how to, again, clip things out and break things down.
Cool, like it. Mirza, in terms of just general watching soccer, and we'll talk about your favorite team, Munchen, in a little bit, but what do you find the players are doing in their off time? Are they watching a lot of games? Are they watching La Liga, EPL? Is it more just when they relax, they don't want to watch the games? What are some of the common themes you see from, the higher level performers?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think this is like all over the place. But what I've come to notice is like, a lot of the guys love to watch more games, and some of like some of like always on the Mondays there's the discussions on the games from the weekend and things like that, even from the most seasoned professionals. So for example, like here at RSL, a guy like Kyle Beckerman, who's an incredible guy and has had a long career and has quite a few caps with the U.S. national team, is 38 and towards the end of his career, but he's always a guy who on Monday morning sits down with me like a breakfast, and he'll ask about different players or guys like that, and about the games that he's watched over the weekend and things like that. So just kind of seeing that a lot of still, even the highest level guys that we have are still nerds or fans of the game still.
Yeah, question for you, because I think it's a good one. I set some of the older boys a little exercise where they had to watch some games of the levels they want to play at. Do you have all of the academy boys watching the USL games, watching the MLS games of Real Salt Lake? Or how important is that for you guys as a coaching staff, that the players get involved with the older teams and kind of that pathway?
Yeah, 100%. So luckily for us, the Monarch Stadium is right on site. So the boys, their dorms are right there. They can pretty much watch the game from their dorms. They go to those games, and then weekend games for sure. Weekday games are a little bit different, but weekend games, all of the boys go to RSL games at the stadium. So we take all the boys, get them on the bus, and take them to the first team game to watch. Trying to get them involved as much as possible and watch the different levels that they're aspiring to play at.
Love it. Do you guys have many players training up, Matty, or from the academy also training with the USL team, or is that too much of a jump, or what do you see from that?
Yeah. Quick sidebar: Kyle Beckerman, man, he grew up in the same area I did, Maryland native.
Yeah, legend, man, legend.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of guys who played up with Loudoun. I mean, we've had a number of players from the 17s and the 19s who have featured heavily with Loudoun. That was actually one of the basically primary drivers of that team and the coaching staff of Loudon was to be pulling players from the academy to give them those opportunities to play to pro level and really test themselves, and they've done a fantastic job of it. Aside from that, just within the academy at various age groups, I mean, we oftentimes have kids playing at least a year up, very often 2 years up. And, you know, we make sure not to put them in an environment where they're in over their head. It's a discussion that we have, again, on a weekly, if not daily basis in our staff meetings, where we go through our rosters and go through who's going to be with what team, roster for the weekend or training for the week, and making sure it's suitable. And it's a conversation between, you know, not only the technical director and the coach of that player, but also the coaches of the age groups around that player. You know, there are a lot of opinions that tie into it, but yeah, we absolutely want to give players that opportunity to bump up and test themselves against older, you know, more challenging competition, possibly in a higher intensity environment, because that's how you develop, whether you're in an MLS academy or you are out playing pickup, or in Mirza's situation, you know, a high school or college kid playing with the men's league teams. Like, you learn from older players. You get better from playing with older players. It's a different challenge. It's a different social structure. It's a whole bunch of things. So it's massively important to us to try to implement that with our players.
Cool. I know we have a couple of boys that are going to train with our USL2 team with Grand Rapids FC. So we're excited to see that kind of incorporate into our academy program. Do you guys have any players that train down age groups because physically maybe they're not ready?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. This past year we did as well.
Could you give an example of kind of how that's benefited them, or why you chose to maybe apply that to their individual plan?
Yeah, Matt, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we've you know, we have two guys who pop to mind who, you know, primarily play games with, you know, an age group down. Players who are rostered with the 17s who then play down with the 15s on the weekend. And again, specifically, it's according to the whole bio-banding agenda by the U.S. Federation and the MLS. And it makes a ton of sense. Those players will train with the 17s, for example, throughout the week. They may bump over into training with the 15s 1 day a week out of the 4. That may vary just depending, again, on the conversations that are going on within the staff and kind of assessing where the player's at and what we think he needs. But then on the weekend, you know, that player or those two players will play down for the weekend. And again, I think at any point, if that player went down an age group and was absolutely tearing it up and was no doubt the best player and needed to come back up with a 17th, then that would happen immediately. So it's all based on development and how that player's functioning in that environment. How
did the player take that? Did they take it as a negative, or because I know I have very similar views in that, you know, it's individual within a collective environment, but you know, I think getting a player to buy into that can be a little bit different. So how did you guys explain it to the players? Was the individual players happy about it? Did they take a bit of time to understand it? Give me some thoughts on that.
I think
sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, sorry. I think just specific, let's say, to this situation, you know, it's, again, I think it comes from a club's cultural and value standpoint. I mean, we made it clear to the player that, you know, we thought this was the best case for his development. And obviously that player had the choice to kind of accept that and go along with it, or to, you know, deny it. I mean, he could say, no, I don't want to do that. In which case, okay, well, then you're competing for a roster spot every week in the 17s where you're not likely to get called into the roster. So would you rather be playing in games where you're growing and competing and getting better, or possibly, you know, competing for a roster spot that you're not in a position in our eyes to compete for? Now, the argument that some would say is, oh, well, why is that kid still on your roster? You know, maybe he's not good enough for that age group. Well, we see a lot of potential in him. He's just slightly smaller and shorter and thinner and hasn't developed yet to the other kids in his age group. And that's okay. He'll get there. And we want to give him every opportunity to do that. And I think the culture within the club is massively important, because when we see that kid playing in the 15s games prior to our 17s games, you better believe every single kid in our 17s there is on the sideline cheering him on and building him up.
That's
no condescending, no mocking. There's nothing to sneer at about it. It's very much a club collective mentality. Doesn't matter what age group you're in.
Love that. Mirza, you got any input on that one?
Yeah, I think Matt hit it on the head, and also from outside of a soccer perspective, we had 2 cases this year of this, and the playing down part also helps the player in question in other ways, in leadership ways, and how they can improve their voice and how they can lead other players because they've experienced maybe older parts of the game, older age groups, or have been in the academy longer. So maybe they wouldn't be comfortable doing it in their age group or playing up, but are more comfortable with the younger age groups.
Love that. So bragging rights, last little bit here, guys. Thank you so much. I know we're taking up some time here, but really appreciate everything. So we'll go to Mirza first. Best player you've played with / coached, and why?
Best players I've coached. Luckily for me, I've gotten to coach Nick Raimondo in quite a few sessions this past year before he retired. And even though last 2-3 years of his career maybe haven't been the best or the greatest, he's had an incredible career, and to be able to kind of pick his brain on different things has been really exciting and a lot of fun. And then kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum is a younger goalkeeper who I coached in the academy, is now first team goalkeeper. And that's also kind of been exciting to see him play for the U20 national team at the World Cup, and you win the USL Championship, and been together since the academy. So that's also and he's a tremendous goalkeeper. So that's also been exciting, kind of to see the rise as well.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome. Matty, same question. Best player you've played with or coached, and why?
Best player I played with? It would probably be maybe two guys. One that I was playing with in Italy, a guy named Michele Pascucci, who I played with when I was with Cecchina my second year there. He also played for Everton years prior, and basically fell out of contract and didn't get picked up anywhere, and kind of signed with us out of desperation, which was amazing to me to get to train and play with him, somebody who was in the Premier League just the season before.
How could you tell? Could you tell he'd been in the Premier League? What kind of made him different from everyone else?
Again, it was work ethic. He was your best friend in the locker room, greatest guy in the world in the locker room, but on the field, you better not cross him. It was just 2 different mentalities. And when he was on the field, it was work. And again, he clearly had his technical ability and his role in the field, but the thing that separated him was his mentality, no question. And then the other guy was a friend of mine, Zurab Tsiskaridze, who we just called Z, who is this guy from the country of Georgia, not the state, who I actually played on an amateur team with, basically between college and going to Italy. And we just happened to cross paths on his amateur team, and he played for the Montreal Impact. He ended up signing in Sweden, and then Croatia and Qatar. And he actually got a call up into the Georgian national team. And the first game he played with them was against Spain in a friendly, and they actually beat Spain. And this was just a couple years ago, right after they'd won the World Cup. So just strange that we crossed paths in an amateur league in the DC area and played with each other for a year. Best player I've coached? Probably 2 guys from Howard University when I was there. Carlos Caro, who's a goalkeeper who ended up being an all-conference goalkeeper for us, and looked like he was close to signing. He'd been working with Loudoun United, our USL affiliate, until this whole COVID thing happened. Also Joel Cunningham, who played for me at Howard, who was made captain of the team as a freshman, which is unheard of, and just tons of pressure to put on a freshman player. He was a Jamaican U20 international and just an exceptional human being. And again, the difference with both of them was their work ethic. You never asked them to train. They never asked for a day off. They were never a pain. They treated their teammates with respect. I mean, they were just like a different class. Definitely kids you would look at who could possibly make that jump to the pro level.
That's awesome. Love it. I'm gonna skip over these ones just so we get time for some questions. So first question was, what is the number one thing I need to become a pro? I'll give it to Mirza first. We can keep it short and sweet because I think we've hammered that one home, hopefully. But what would you say is the number one thing?
For me, your love and passion for the game and willing to really sacrifice a lot of things that normal high schoolers and college age kids do in their regular lives.
Like it, Matty?
I'd say it's commitment. I mean, if you're committed to this, if you're serious about being a pro, you need to understand that you are not competing with the kids on your team. You're not competing with the kids in your neighborhood or your state or your region or your country. You're competing with every kid in the world, because every kid in the world wants to be a pro somewhere, someplace, somehow. And you better believe there are a lot of kids out there who are a hell of a lot better than you are, and you better be committed to working relentlessly just to give yourself a chance. So I would say it's that.
Like it. I think we already talked a little bit about dealing with kind of physically smaller players. Standing out in ID camps or tryouts and stuff like that. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but what would you say, kind of, Matty, what's the things to do and what's the definite no-nos?
I would say do the basics right. Again, from a character standpoint, the moment
let me change that, Matty, just because I've just had a thought there. So let's change it maybe from ID camps, but say we go to a showcase as a team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what would you say are the biggest? You know, obviously you want your team to win, and you want to showcase well as an individual. So, you know, would you have any advice to a team or a group of players that are going to a big showcase where they know there's going to be ID college scouts and they know there's going to be MLS scouts? Maybe that's a different question.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, that does change the question. I would say, you know, make sure you first off show that you work harder than anybody else on the field. Again, you have to prove that you are technically sound. You have to prove that you can play your position properly, that you fit within your team and the system of play within your team. But, you know, if I'm coming to watch you kind of in a one-off game, you know, you need to show me that you are going to do your defensive work from the first minute to the 90th minute. You need to show me that you're going to take risk when you have the ball. Not unnecessary risk, but you're not scared to play a first-time pass into space. You're not going to hesitate to try to beat a player one-on-one in the right moment. You have to understand that you have to figure out what the attribute or the thing is that you're going to have that separates you from other players. There are too many times when I go and I watch kids and, you know, oh, yeah, that kid's really good. He's a sound player. He could probably be a good role player somewhere. But how is he any different than any of the other 25 kids I have on the roster right now? Yeah, he's just as good. But I don't want to bring in someone who's just as good. I want to bring in someone who gives me something different. So a big part of his intelligence. It's not playing recklessly, but you have to figure out what the attribute is that's going to separate you from everybody else.
I like that. I like that a lot. Mirza, I'm going to tie this into to Aiden's question, who is our 2004 goalkeeper. He's asked, what qualities are you looking for in a goalkeeper? So that could be maybe scouting in a game or just kind of general things that at the higher levels that you guys are looking for that separates from the average Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, for obviously the game is becoming the position is becoming so much more complex than it has in the past. So for me, when I go out to watch a game, obviously it's extremely difficult sometimes for goalkeepers because depending on the game, but you know, what is that unique quality that you have that can set you apart from others, like Matt touched on. You know, is it in this game you're called upon to make a few very good saves? can you execute those saves? Do you have that ability to be a match winner? Maybe it's a physical thing, and by physical thing, I don't mean, having to be a 6'4" goalkeeper. Maybe it's your speed to close space, your speed to clean up balls played over the top and behind your back line. Maybe it's your explosiveness, different things like that. Your tactical knowledge. Do you communicate? Are you tied into the team? Psychologically, how do you respond to mistakes or negative situations in the game? So there's a lot of different things that you can be very good at that will get the attention of coaches to hopefully bring you in on trials or to see more of you. And then when you do get those opportunities, can you make sure that you are confident in your other areas, obviously your technical, your tactical, whatever areas of the game as well.
Cool, love it. Well, I think that pretty much wraps everything up. So, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've just gone for an hour and 20 minutes there, and I honestly think everything that is said has been absolute gold for our players, which hopefully they'll take on and learn from. So, again, just thank you so much. We look forward to kind of staying in touch, and hopefully, Mirza, if you're back in Grand Rapids, you can kind of drop in and say hello because you're a bit of a local hero and a big time. But anyway, I'll record this and I'll send it out to everybody to watch. Thank you, everyone that kind of jumped on and watched. Don't be scared to give a little thank you to Mirza and Matty in the comments bar there. And then hopefully we'll be back on the field soon. So thank you again, guys. I wish you luck with the seasons whenever they eventually get going. And we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, James.
See you guys.